I joined the Army right out of high school. I ditched a whole bunch of scholarships. I have what a friend of mine, good friend of mine says, I have happy feet. I have a very low boredom threshold. And the Army, when I graduated from high school, started a program called High School to Flight School. This would be in 1966. I came from a military family. I was an Army brat. And I was really interested. I was scared to death they were going to end that war in Vietnam before I could get to it. I had never flown anything except as a passenger, and then only a couple times. I had no idea if I could fly or should fly, but I met all the prerequisites. I was young, stupid, and bulletproof, and it sounded exciting. So I went into the Army as a helicopter pilot. I went to Nam, of course. That was what they promised. Then to Germany for 3 years, my second time to Germany. Came back to the States, and I discovered a couple of quick things. I went to the Armory. I got a direct commission while I was in Vietnam from warrant officer to lieutenant, battlefield commission. And then I had to go to armor school coming back from Germany to fixed wing transition at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach. And then to Fort Hood, Texas with the 1st Cav Division, still flying, and realized fairly quickly that a peacetime Army is really boring. There is nothing to do but get ready for the next war. Other than that, you're just training. And so I bailed, was a flight instructor for a little while for the Army, civilian flight instructor. The first 50 hours helicopter training in the Army are done by civilian, so you don't have any of the military or rank issues in the cockpit. And I trained the first woman to come through the Army flight program and the first return to POW. But got bored with that pretty quickly too, and then went out west and did forestry work, fighting forest fires. I'm a heliTAC pilot, and game surveys and that sort of stuff. We specialized in mountain flying. I lived in and flew everything between Arizona and Montana. Lived in Arizona, Montana, and Colorado at different times doing forestry work. My wife at the time got tired of living out of the back of a truck, dragging a 1-year-old around as I went from contract to contract, staying about 3 or 4 months at each place. And I got a job offer to come back east as a corporate pilot. That was with the construction company. And as a matter of fact, won some awards for the best construction safety program in the state, and then for another one for the best construction safety program in the country. So I had some, a fairly considerable transportation and safety background. When I was working for the construction company, I originally went to work as the company pilot. And in that capacity, my job was to fly mostly the vice president of the company to job sites, so he could visit the goal was every job was visited every week. A substantial part of the company's business was utility work, sewer and water work. And through that, and as the company safety officer, I became intimately familiar with utility work, because the safety program was oriented around, which was extremely dangerous, particularly sewer work, which is deep work. After flying for 4 years, and they realized that I was getting bored, they offered me a job as a full-time construction project manager. And my first construction project was a water treatment plant, and I also oversaw some water line work in that same part of the state. So I have kind of a background that touched on a whole lot of different things that Aii is involved in. I got bored again, and when I became the project manager, that was even more boring. And about that time, the Coast Guard started a program, a direct commission aviator program, where if you'd been a pilot in a prior service, you could come directly into the Coast Guard as an O2 with quick promotion to O3 if you had a minimum of 1,000 hours of helicopter time. And I had all of that and more. And so that sounded exciting. So I joined the Coast Guard. I went to Air Station Houston and spent 4.5 years in Houston. And when I first came on board the Coast Guard, it was exciting flying, because that was the late 70s we're talking about now. And people had too much money. They were making money in the oil field faster than they could spend it. They're buying boats. They figured, the Galveston Bay seems kind of boring. It's kind of calm, so we'll just go off the Galveston jetties out there to the Gulf of Mexico. That's just the Gulf, it's no big deal. Only soon to discover, let's go into sea. And so we had a lot of rescues to do. And between that and the activity on the oil rigs, if we had the watch, we were going to fly. And so we were doing a lot of rescues. Pretty exciting stuff too. A lot of night work, a lot of severe weather stuff, really bad weather flying. One memorable case off the Galveston Sea Buoy, the Burma Agate Mimosa collision. Freighter T-boned a tanker that was outbound out of the port of Houston with a full load of oil. Huge fire. We could see the fireball from Ellington, 25 miles away. We were in the air within 5 minutes of getting the call, which was pretty quick. Got on scene. Only 2 people survived on the tanker. As we approached the tanker, we could see the bodies in the water. Water was on fire, tanker was on fire. There was a huge explosion. There were 2 guys the crewman spotted standing on a rail. So we swung in, swung the basket over to them, picked them up, and got away. We heard their story later. They told it in the hospital that everybody had jumped off the ship but them. One of them could not swim. They were Taiwanese. And he knew if he jumped in the water, he'd die, if for no other reason. And his buddy said, "I'll stay with you." And so they stayed there. That explosion we saw as we approached the ship occurred. They realized, by then they were standing on the rail because it was wooden. The deck was too hot to stand on. They realized at that time they were going to have to jump, and the way they described it after the fact was, it said it was like there was this sudden rush of wind and a blinding light, and the basket appeared right there in front of them. They kind of thought it was like an act of God. They jumped into the basket, but they were the only 2 saved off of that. Then we ran over and we wound up hoisting another 24 off of the freighter Mimosa that had T-boned them, and took them to Galveston and to a nearby rig various times. So that was a pretty memorable night. That helicopter today, the 1426, is in the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. But that was in the late 70s, and things, like I said, were exciting. And then all of a sudden, the oil crisis occurred. The money dried up. They quit. People who were not qualified quit going out to sea in their boat. So we got bored. And I like to tell people that I made my living at the time on other people's misfortune. And so I was bored because they weren't going out and getting in trouble. So it got to the point, if we had to watch, we probably weren't going to fly. And an air station is staffed for 24/7 response, 365 days a year. So that's a lot of pilots and hardly any flying. So I got bored again. And then I think I got hit in the head with a rotor blade and decided to go to law school. So that led me into the law.